topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Camping Show. I'm CW Getz.
And I'm Bianca Cahill. It is 88 degrees on this Wednesday.
Yes, Wednesday, June 22nd. And you know what? At least it's not 100 today like it was yesterday. I don't know if it was actually 100. It was like 90. It was 97 or something like that.
It all feels the same.
Yeah. How are you feeling, Bianca? You were a little under the weather here the last few days. You feeling any better?
I'm feeling good.
Yeah, good. Not like doing like cartwheels or anything, but good enough to do the show. We're glad to see you here.
Sticking it out.
Hey, did you ever leave the house and forget to button maybe one of the buttons, or if you're a guy, forget to zip your pants up or anything like that? I'm sure.
Yeah, all the time.
I just did that earlier here. I got on the show and I had my Floatzilla muscle shirt on, and Dave said, "Hey, we're at the gun show today." I said, "Well, yeah. What? I got to change my shirt." So I mean, I was in a scramble. Last week I dug it out of the laundry, if you remember correctly, but we didn't get any comments of like, "Hey, I see all the wrinkles in your shirt." But so at least now I feel like complete. I'm dressed and ready to go. So how was your week, by the way?
Good.
Other than feeling ill. I mean,
it could be better. But I'm staying positive.
Good stuff. Absolutely. Well, tonight's episode is brought to you by Campground Views, making camping easier.
Rutabaga Paddle Sports, providing time on the water.
And by Novacraft Canoe, connecting with nature since 1970. Tonight's episode is Let's Talk SUPs with our special guest, Dave Boehne and Danny Mongno. Bianca, could you tell us a little bit about these fellows?
45-year-old Dave Boehne, a.k.a. The Brown Blur, is the owner, CEO, and creative director for Infinity Surfboard Company in Dana Point, California. Awarded the title of Male Paddle of the Year at the SUP Awards in 2012. He was also a gold medalist as a member of Team USA paddle sport team at the ISA World Games in 2015. Dave has starred in the SUP Industries award-winning films H2 Indo, H2 Mexico, Chasing Gold, and The Conversations, which can all be seen on iTunes. Paddle sports has been Danny Mongno's life for over 30 years. Danny's first real job was at the age of 16, as he proclaims that he's never looked back. Having experienced a plethora of amazing adventures in those 30 years, Danny admits he's met a lot of wonderful people, including his lovely wife. In Danny's words, to say paddle sports has contributed to an amazing life for me would be a huge understatement. Danny currently resides in Lake Placid, New York, with his wife and their dog. While working for NRS, he continues to spend his free time playing on the water, even when it's frozen. Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey, what's up? How are you guys?
Good. How is the weather out there, Dave and Danny, where you guys are at? Because you're in two different places, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in Southern California. You know the weather report. It's the same every day, sunny and awesome. And it's summertime, so we're right in the thick of it. So no complaints here.
The water's cold though out there, isn't it? In the Pacific,
it's starting to get warm. I mean, I don't know what you consider warm or cold, but for us, it's getting pretty warm actually. Maybe mid 60s. So we're starting to shed a little bit of the rubber.
Yeah. You know, when I was in Florida, we went out at like 12:30 one night. We were just getting ready to go on a cruise, and the water was warmer than our body temp, and that's warm.
That's always nice. I
like that. Yeah. When in California, I froze.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess if you're not in a tropical area, I guess you would consider it cold. But
yeah,
we're digging it. Yeah,
but good surfing weather though.
Absolutely.
How about it, Danny? What's the weather like where you're at?
Oh, dude, it's so bad. So we're so far north in Lake Placid. We're right on the Canadian border. It snowed on Saturday, blowing like 20 miles an hour. And, of course, I was teaching on the water. So it was definitely pretty savage weather, to say the least.
Wow. Wow. And it snowed. Holy smokes.
Yeah, man. Sideways snow in June. That's what you get in the Adirondacks.
That is crazy. That is absolutely crazy. How do you like that?
Well, as a company that excels at making dry suits, it makes my life a lot easier. I was warm, so it was okay for me.
As long as you're good, it's all good.
Yeah, right.
I love it. I love it. Take it away, Bianca. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. How did you all get started at stand-up paddleboarding? And Danny, let's have you go first.
So the company I was working for at the time, we saw the trend starting in 2006, and so we brought out our first stand-up paddle. We had one model, one shaft, one blade, and looking back on it, it was absolutely terrible. The blade was too big, the shaft was too stiff, but it was the infancy of the sport, and we were definitely kind of on the cutting edge. And it's funny, from me being a kayaker my whole life, it was time to start stand-up paddling, and I'd never did it before. And it was actually when I was first introduced to Infinity, because our company bought a bunch of stand-up paddle boards so the reps can get on the water, and I had this board with this cool Infinity logo. And being a right coaster and growing up a bodyboarder, I really didn't know who Infinity was. I guess I was kind of a kook, probably Dave would say, and I could never pronounce the name. It was like, oh, this Boehne board, and it took a really long time for me to even figure out like what the deal was. I was definitely kooking it, but the first time I stood up on a wave, it definitely changed my life, and I was pretty hooked. And I probably spend more time stand up paddling these days than I do sitting down. My wife and I were just out today with the dog, and it's definitely really changed my perspective of paddling for sure. I absolutely love it, and yeah, it's pretty awesome.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Dave, your father was an innovator for the SUP, if I'm correct. What were the first stand-up paddleboards like?
Yeah, I think we started making stand-up paddleboards real early by accident, because we were just surfboard manufacturers, and people started asking us to make really large surfboards, basically, so that they could stand on them. So, yeah, kind of good timing and everything that worked out. But yeah, some of the very first stand-up paddleboards are basically extra large surfboards, very long, as wide as you can make them. And still made like a surfboard. They weren't made in EPS foam yet. And yeah, really they were tandem surfboards, boards that we made for two people to ride on. And yeah, the biggest surfboard you could get was basically a stand-up paddleboard back then. And
well, quick story. Your dad somebody came to your dad and asked him to make this special board. Is that right, if I remember?
Yeah, there was a few guys in the beginning, because my dad was known for making tandem boards. There wasn't, there was a handful of guys making tandem boards, but my dad kind of was like specialized in it. So people who first started on stand-up paddling or even tried it might have been on a tandem board, because that was the biggest boards you could find, or maybe a giant windsurfer. And a lot of times they'd look at the tandem board and go, oh, that's Steve Boehne or Infinity. So then they'd reach out to us and, hey, I want to get a tandem board. I want to learn how to paddle on it. So that's kind of how the first, kind of ones came. And, a lot of kind of the pioneers in stand-up paddle, have told me along the way that, maybe they tried stand-up for the first time on one of the tandem boards. And that's kind of cool to envision that lineage,
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's cool. Yeah. I would call it more timing than anything, right?
So that was kind of how you got into it then. From other people doing this. Yeah.
Just by default. Like I was going to events for our business before I even had an interest in paddling. It was just part of our business already. So I would help my dad at these events and, work the booth and talk to people and whatnot. And then, eventually you start getting exposed to it and you try it. And then, a lot of things when, stuff's a little more fun when you try it actually. Instead,
Sure.
So I definitely try not to write anything off before I could try it and form an opinion. Yeah, just kind of got hooked, like Danny said. And to me, I'm kind of the opposite. I grew up surfing. I never did paddle sports. So to add a paddle, it really made me fall in love with paddling. So I got really interested in like outrigger and just, just the fundamentals of paddling. And it was fun to feel myself get better at it. So to combine the two was really cool.
I'm just going to ask you if that was weird, being a surfer and then putting a paddle in your hand and kind of doing this surfing thing with a paddle. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that would be like, what the hell, you know?
I mean, sometimes it's still weird. It's like, if you explain it to a hardcore surfer, they're all, why do you need the paddle? I surf all the
right.
time, and you don't really
What do you
get
tell
it. It's just all the typical things. You could catch more waves. It's a little more comfortable to paddle out. It's painful to paddle on your stomach, as a surfer. And just get a vision of the lineup, all the typical things, but it doesn't really sound that much better until you try it. And then, there's time and place for both. And, I still love stand-up paddle surfing. I do it a lot, and, it's fun. So
That's
just
cool.
try to do it as much as I can.
Dave, how has stand-up paddleboarding evolved since the beginning, when you can remember people asking your father to make them? How do you think that's evolved, and as well as the styles of stand-up paddleboarding and how they differ from maybe the East Coast to the West Coast?
Yeah, I mean, Danny could add to this too, but I mean, it's changed so much, right? I mean, it was not a sport into a full industry. So the progression from those days till now was huge and fast, and some might argue it grew so fast that's a little, that could be a problem in some ways. But everybody tries to get a faster board, one that you could surf larger waves in, you could do crazier stuff, and a lot of times as a board maker, you're just trying to keep up with what the athletes want to do. So the athletes kept getting better and pushing their limits. So they needed the equipment to get there. So, simultaneously you guys are working together. And since then, you just wanted to stand and paddle. Now guys have specific designs to do specific things,
Oh, wow.
So, if you're really into stand-up paddling on the surf and the race side, and even the cruising fishing side, I mean, you could have a quiver of 10 boards in your garage if you wanted. So,
Wow.
it just depends how much you're into it. So,
How do those designs vary? What are the things that make one board perform differently than another?
I mean, like what you expect, right? A surfing board has a lot more surfing characteristics. They're shorter, they have more fins for control, lighter weight. A race board, you want them skinny and long, just like you'd see an Olympic sprint canoe or something like that. So something that just cuts the water. It's nice. Touring board is stable and bigger. You can put gear on it. River board, same thing, maybe a little more stubby, stable, high volume, really durable. So they're all kind of tailor fit to each discipline of paddling. And there's a lot of design that goes into all of them. It gets pretty crazy. So
Interesting. Very good.
Awesome. All right, stay tuned. We're going to take a little break. More on the camping show at W4CY Talk 4 TV.
It's time to go camping. Introducing Campground View's virtual tours. You can tour the campground, see the sites, see if they are available, and click to book your perfect spot. Hit the open road and explore the amazing places found in nature. We make it easy to discover, find, and book your site so that you can go have the fun and freedom you seek. Campground View's virtual tours make it easy and simple for you to see where you are going.
A few years ago, someone asked Rutabaga's owner, Darren Bush, "Hey, how long have you guys been selling boats?" Darren replied, "We don't sell boats. We sell time on the water." Of course, that comes in all types. We help people paddle more safely with Rutabaga outdoor programs. We rent canoes, kayaks, and stand-up paddleboards. We sell and install racks to get you from home to adventure. Rutubaga's got everything you need to get you out on the water, like paddles, life jackets, dry bags, and clothing. Rutabaga Paddle Sports, on the web at rutabaga.com. Mention you saw this ad on the camping show.
There's nothing like being out there. For over 50 years, we've been connecting people with nature by building classic Canadian canoe designs using the best materials available. We built a reputation on durable, dependable canoes that allow you to focus on what's important, whether that's unplugging in remote wilderness, spending quality time with your favorite people, or nailing the perfect line. Visit novacraft.com to find the perfect canoe for you and locate your nearest authorized dealer.
And we're back with our guests, Dave Boehne and Danny Mongno, here on the Camping Show. Fellas, commonly people who are curious about trying a sport buy something cheap at their local sports equipment store, and at least in part because they aren't sure if they'll actually like the sport and end up, sticking with it. And they don't want to have a lot of money invested if that happens to be the case. What would each of you recommend with regard to that scenario for, people who are interested in trying this SUP?
Well, I'm going to be like the dark cloud, right? And everyone watching the show is going to be like, oh man, like this dude's just angry. He just wants to sell his own stuff. And so the challenge is, and please, anybody who's listening to the show, I really want you to take this seriously. Like one of the biggest designers right now of stand-up paddle boards is Amazon Prime. Like boards need to fit a certain size to ship Prime. So manufacturers are making these ridiculously tiny little boards. And so, for example, it is an infinity board. My SUP surfboard, somebody who's an experienced paddler who's going to take this in the waves, is 27 inches wide. And I'm seeing friends of mine, family of mine, and they're buying these boards because the price is too good. Like, oh my goodness, I can get a board for $400 with a paddle and a pump and a hat and a pair of underpants, and what a package. And these boards are 9.5 feet long by 27 inches wide, and nobody can stand on them.
Right.
And then so what happens is people just get like just so sad, and they're like, man, this is a terrible sport. I never want to do this. So
Right. That's the problem, right?
so what I'm saying is that, the stuff you're seeing on the web, I just really caution you, and your best bet is to go to your local retailer, even if it's an REI, and just say, hey man, I'm interested in the sport. Can you tell me what you need to know? And avoid the online shopping areas because the deals are too good to pass up. It's insane. And, with the COVID boom out there, companies like Costco and Walmart, they all saw this trend to get outside. And there is an abundance of stand-up paddleboards out there right now. And when you look at, quality companies like Infinity and NRS, like we're trying to provide great service, great product, great warranties. There's a word that Costco and Walmart don't know. And and people are like, oh, those guys are just price gouging. Like, how dare they charge $1,100 for a board when there's a lot more to it? So try to stop in your local retailer and get the skinny, before you hit the buy button, because there's a lot of stuff out there that's just sadly not good.
Yeah.
And I'm going to turn it over to Dave. Dave's a lot more of a positive person than I am. Let's see.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, by the way, what you said, and I don't think it's a big negative thing.
No,
Dave,
yeah.
what is there to this? I mean, talk about that. Try it before you buy a test drive thing. I mean, how important is that, right? It's what.
Yeah, I mean, I think the easiest thing to do is go rent one, right? Go to your local lake. There's going to be a place that rents one. More than likely, they have the big, easy one because that's, what they know people can ride. And, you kind of take it from there. Like say the board is 30 inches wide and it was not stable enough for you, obviously you got to look for something a little wider, 32 wide maybe. So yeah, I think the try before buy thing is perfect. And once you find a size for you, whether a pretty typical one is something like 10, 6, 11 feet by 32 wide. Most people in general could stand on that board, and then you have that parameter of what size. Now you can start shopping for something, right? So and the cheap stuff, if it's the wrong size and it's the wrong product, that's absolutely wrong, but if you could find something cheap that's that size, that doesn't bother me all that much, because I know then you're going to enjoy yourself. You're going to have a good time. And then you're going to decide, wow, okay, I'm committed to this. I need something nicer, So then that's when you look to the more legit companies like myself and NRS for, proper equipment. And, I'm guilty of that. I'll do that. I'm into golfing, and I started with my Costco set, and, but once I knew I was deep in the golf rabbit hole, you go get fitted. I had to spend some money. I'm committed, and like instantly I was better, like night and day difference. So that
And
cheap
that's good to
kick,
note. That's
yeah,
very good to note. I mean, you notice a difference. That's right away. There's something to that.
yeah. So the cheap kick got me over the hump. Now I'm committed, and now I'm I look for brands that are legit and quality, and I know I'm spending my money right. So yeah, so there's a little bit of two sides to that, but definitely starting off with good equipment the first time and having a good experience. And hey, if you have everything in line and you still don't like it, okay, maybe it's not for you, but chances are you're going to like it, have a good time, because it is so easy to do. You can do it anywhere, all the typical things we've seen, a grandma can do it, your child can do it. So that's why, it exploded so fast. It is an easy, simple, fun sport.
Let me address this. If you do happen to go out and try it and you like it, and you go get and by the way, I should ask, what is a quality board? Where do those start?
Like I would say, if you could find a board, around $1,000, like a quality one's going to be around $1,000. It's $1,000 or more. If you're getting into prices like $700 and it includes a paddle and everything, I would start to be weary about it. And what I'm saying is, the under $1,000 ones, the construction is way, way different. So not saying that it's going to like sink or disintegrate under your feet. It might, but it won't withstand, impacts. It won't withstand heat well, it'll just get discolored, stuff like that. And you know what, that's fine if that's what you want to do and you don't really care. And the budget is your main thing. Awesome. But if you spend a little bit more around the $1,000 mark, you're in, right? And it's going to last a long time. And $1,000 sounds like a lot, but think about it. You don't have to pay for a lift ticket. You don't got to buy gas to ride it. You don't got to, you know what I mean? It's actually a really cheap sport if you break it down.
Do either of you lend credence to this philosophy that if you buy something good or of good quality, it's a lot easier to sell than if you buy something of a lot lesser quality and try to sell it?
Absolutely. And
regardless of the price.
Yeah. And I consider that board to be like, it's like a beach cruiser. At least everyone in California has a beach cruiser in their garage, like, cause everyone can ride it. It's such a simple bike to ride. You kind of keep them forever. So that 10-6 32 board, you have relatives coming into town, you have the kids coming over, anybody can ride the damn thing. So, $1,000 goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. Good deal.
So what type of insight would you offer those who are trying whitewater tripping, ocean paddling, each with a stand-up paddleboard? What type of insight would you give those people who have taken that next step and are committed to getting those $1,000 or more boards?
Well, I'll take the whitewater one, although I am blessed to say that Dave and I have both done the Middle Fork of the Salmon River in Idaho, which is one of the hardest permits to get in the entire U.S. National Park System. Um, Absolutely amazing 8-day overnighter. I've been blessed to do the Grand Canyon on a stand-up paddleboard, and I've got nothing but excitement and stoke for people who want to try whitewater on a stand-up paddleboard. It takes away, as a whitewater kayaker, there's so much more stress to flipping and swimming out of your kayak, where with a whitewater SUP, man, you fall off, you get back on. And now certainly I'm not telling everybody to go and run the Kern in California or the Kennebec in Maine. Like, you're going to get a savage beatdown. So you got to understand the river, but the learning curve is massive. And I just can't say enough great things about it. Certainly there are parameters. The more shallow the river, the more shots you're going to take in the ass and the thighs and the hips, and it hurts. So there's proper gear, but it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. Find a retailer, find a local agency that's offering whitewater instruction, and just embrace it and go with it, man. It's incredible because it takes at 49 years old now, my desire to run class 5 is not as much as it was when I was 39 years old. I'm married now. I have a serious job now. It's hard to just get out and go run stuff that takes the mental preparation where I could seriously get hurt. Where with stand-up paddling, you can run class 2 and even just moving water and catch eddies and break out of eddies and surf little waves, and you're just bubbling over with joy. It's so great. And that just looking down into the river, especially places like the Middle Fork of the Salmon, where the water's so clear, and seeing the rocks go by, man, it's trippy without doing drugs. It's really, really amazing. And I highly recommend it. So yeah, I'll let Dave take the ocean thing. He's the California guy.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, to get into ocean surfing, Santa Paula is just like getting into surfing. You just seek out your local lesson center. There's a lot of like regional coaches. A good friend of mine, Anthony Vela, does a lot of coaching. People fly in to see him and get lessons. And it's just like anything, like I take golf lessons, so I know video goes a long way. Same with surfing. So yeah, it's just cool. Like, come out, seek a zone, like, a local shop, and they could point you in the right directions for a good coach. And it's, one lesson will go a long way just to learn certain things, just how to get out specifically, through the waves, and, what to look for. And, there's all those little things that go a long way with, a lot more than the obvious ones, like, how do I turn and all that stuff. It starts with the little fundamentals first, and then you kind of figure it out from there. But yeah, you just got to go for it. Get out to the coast and get some waves. That's how you got to do it.
Yeah. What would you say? What would you two guys, between the two, whitewater and ocean paddling, what do you think is easier?
Well, for me, it was ocean paddling. And that one of the things when me and Danny were working together, I really started getting into whitewater paddling because there was a lot of events.
Mhm.
And anything new, I wanted to try it. And it was really, really hard and humbling. Just
Really?
like, yeah, every single part of it, like just what Danny mentioned, like learning the river, the eddies. Like I remember the first river race we did, no one really told us anything. And I mean, all the surfer guys are running out there in board shorts, no helmet, nothing, like no shoes or anything. And you're like, oh, that's what you do. And I remember the race ended with a little rapid that you had to do at the end. And it's fun, you don't make it, but a couple times, like someone fell backwards and
wow.
almost hit their head at the rocks, and you're like,
Oh,
why
wow.
aren't we wearing helmets? Like, this is unreal. And so just learning all that stuff. And I didn't even know what life vest to use, so I called Danny. I'm like, dude, I need a life vest, the best one. I don't want to drown. I need the leash.
Wow.
I need the right clip. I need the helmet. And, lucky for me, he's an expert on that. So he just sends me the package of all the right stuff I need. And I just go at it and be a kook on the river. And, but it was so fun to learn because it's the opposite of surfing. It truly is like, if you're going to fall in the river, you load the opposite rail than you would when you're surfing.
Oh.
And so it's like, I got mind freaked for so long, but once you get it. And just like learning the eddies and finding the little tongues and the, and making it out and all the bracing you have to do. It's just like, it's kind of like a decoding everything. And that's super, super fun for me. And, so yeah, whitewater was the hardest for me. Danny might say the opposite. So I think we both helped each other in that way.
Right. Right. Well, Danny, what was easier for you?
Well, it's funny that Dave says it that way. So when I think of whitewater, I think of chess, right? It's the group dynamics, the communication, the safety, the breaking down the rapids, knowing when to walk a rapid, knowing when to run one. I don't talk about a very soulful experience on the river. I wouldn't call it a very beautiful experience. For me, it's more of it's a mind game, right? It's stratego, where for me, there's no feeling like surfing a wave. And I've done it on a bodyboard at a competitive level. I've done it in kayaking at a competitive level, but there's nothing like standing up on a wave. And, earlier, David talked about the difference between, prone surfing or traditional surfing and stand-up surfing. And, for me, the greatest thing about stand-up is that you don't have to do the hardest thing in surfing, which is the pop-up, right? Where you're like paddling in and then you got to pop up into the wave.
Yeah.
So for somebody who understands where to be in the ocean on a wave, from all my experience now, like I'm already standing, like I'm doing everything I need to do. And man, from all the experiences, especially, Dave's, home break of San Onofre is just such a classic stand-up spot, and gliding on a wave is just beautiful. So, whatever your bag is, man, they're both super, super fun. And obviously, I think the deeper we get into these conversations, I hope the listeners can, really hear the passion in Dave and I's voice, because it's a level of excitement and love that, again, since I was 16 years old, I'm just so stoked to have a paddle in my hand.
Yeah, that's very cool. I can relate to you or relate to what you said about standing up at the board. Once you and Dave mentioned it's hard paddling out, and it's very hard paddling out. And the standing up part, I never did very well. I think I successfully did that once, and that was been my only surfing experience. But yeah, it was difficult as hell for me. So
Yeah, one of the harder sports I would say is surfing. It's not like a basketball rim where it's just sitting there the same thing every time, and you're
yeah,
you're doing this. The surfing's different every time you stand up every day. So and the rides are so short, so you're not getting those reps and not a lot of surfing time. When you're learning. So I think it's one of the hardest sports to learn, honestly, and it seems like one of those things that you do. It does help a lot if you start at an early age.
oh yeah,
But a lot of that's how a lot of guys got introduced with surfing, was the stand-up paddle group, because it is that much easier to learn. So that's another cool thing about that.
yeah, very cool. Both of you guys worked together at one point in your careers. Tell us about that.
Yeah.
Got some funny stories to share.
Yeah, no, it's cool. Like, kind of a lot of the things for stand-up paddling with me, like, happened by accident, and timing. And, I just started stand-up paddling, like I mentioned, by accident. And then, sooner or later, I just did a couple competitions. And then, one day the Werner rep, who was Dan Gavir at the time, he's like, "Hey man, I want to sponsor you for Werner Paddles." I'm like, "All right." So I guess I'm a sponsored paddler now. And it was kind of that simple, right? And I didn't really know, or he's like, "Yeah," and he starts sending me all these paddles. I'm like, "Cool, I need new paddles." And it was changing so much at the time, so it was cool to try different sizes and all that good stuff. And Dan was really cool at that. And then yeah, it just happened like kind of accident. Then you start get invited to go on a trip for the magazine. The magazines were launching there, and so cool. Yeah, it was just kind of fun. And I met Danny through Werner. I think Danny, you were like Dan Gavir's boss maybe at the time, or I think you were just, or maybe marketing, doing a little bit of both. And so I was introduced through the rep and through Danny, and then me and Danny had more of a personal relationship. Through that, I started working more direct with Danny, and it was cool because Danny was excited about the surfing side of it, and at that time I was getting excited about the racing side of it. So we could pick each other's brains on that stuff, and we were like prototyping the same stuff and like really wanting to see where certain things were going. We had the same kind of vision of what we wanted in our hands, and I always really loved the Werner brand because it was a family, business made in the USA, a lot like our story, and it just. The brand connected with me right away. And I was always grateful for Danny's help because, like I said, all the stuff I didn't know in paddling, he knew. So it was cool to, get all the info from someone like him.
Interesting.
Yeah, in the photos I sent, and there are some funny ones that involved Dave and I, there was one particular I wanted to find. It was Steve, Dave's dad, actually shaped a 4-person SUP touring board, probably a one of a kind in the entire world. And I had a photo of my boss at the time, the owner of Werner Paddles, and his wife, and Dave's mom and dad all on the board at the same time. And it was really just it was exactly how it was. Like, we were 2 family-owned businesses that just meshed, and Dave and I just really kind of formed a personal relationship right away, and the work that we did together was awesome. And so the Battle of the Paddle at the time was the biggest stand-up paddle race in the world. I mean, literally, it was a world event. And every time that I would come down to work it was in Dave's hometown. And, it was like he just treated me like he was, I was family. And I felt so good about it. And it was a really, really good working relationship. And I'm just super proud of it. And glad to reconnect today.
Nice.
Bianca, go ahead and ask him that question because we're just chatting about that here.
Oh, the race you weren't supposed to win.
I was typing her while you're sorry, Danny.
So yeah, so this is actually super funny. So every year for the holidays at Werner Paddles, we would bring in an influential athlete to talk to the whole staff. And so I invited Dave, and it was stand up was blowing up, and these guys had no idea what the sport was. And now, in Dave's defense, like he would drag my ass all
Here it
over the
comes.
water right now. But at this particular time, Dave was a surfer and I was an endurance athlete, and we had this race in Wisconsin, and I was on fire at the time. Like I was meshing my running with my paddling, and I had a good race, and I beat Dave, and I didn't think anything of it. Like we just slapped the high five at the end, had a beer, and it was good. And apparently there was some pent up anger about it because at the company meeting, Dave calls me out, man. He's just like, crucified me for winning that race. He wanted me to lay down.
Yeah,
It was
Pent up anger. I love
super
it.
fun time.
no, that was cool because I remember this, like I said, I just started like, okay, I'm a paddle athlete, so Werner and whoever's offering me to to send me to some races and whatever, and I'm just getting into racing. So I remember I even asked Danny, like, hey, what kind of workout should I be doing? Like I think he even taught me how to hold the paddle correctly, like how to paddle technique and everything. So we go to this race, and I remember he like woke up at 4 a.m. and like was running and stuff, and that stuff was like,
oh wow,
foreign to me. I'm like waking up and sleeping in, having breakfast and stuff. So he was a very fit dude. So it didn't surprise me he beat me, but I was just like, man, he has me coming out here to race for him, and what does he need me here for? And after that, that was right when I was really starting to get into racing, and I got really, really into it. And I actually just had a race last weekend, so I'm still into it and learned a lot. And like I said, it's like you want to work with companies that are legit, and Danny was legit as it came. And like I said, I could ask him questions that I didn't know, and it was cool. So
he at least buy you a beer for beating you, or what?
Danny's always good for a laugh and a beer, that's for sure. But I think Danny likes something that clinks in your glass.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh wow, just a little hard stuff. Wow, good for him. Good for him.
One of the best race experiences I had with you is, do you remember when me and Slater did that race in DC?
Yes.
So CW, this is on the Potomac, like with the monuments all in the background.
Oh, wow.
And it, this was definitely at the height. I would say this was probably like 2011. The race scene was still really sustained, and Dave and this gentleman Slater Trout, who's a good friend of Dave's, are some of the best racers in the world. And it was a stacked field, and God, just to line up with those dudes was so incredible, and to race, in the the capital of the nation was super, super fun, man. Like, we could sit back and, man, this whole podcast could take 3 hours of just telling stories. But there's been a lot of great moments with Dave, and it's been really super fun.
That's very cool. That's very cool.
Roxy,
it's great that you got that history.
I'm sorry, C-Dub. What did you say?
You're fine. Oh, I said it was great that you guys have that history like that you've got all those stories to share.
Sure,
it's been good.
Sorry, Bianca, go ahead.
No, you're good, CW. Let's take a look at some of those photos that Dave and Danny have, Roxy.
Yeah, what do we got here?
Yeah, so what was cool for me when I was on Werner Paddles, Danny kind of like I think I might have been the first stand-up paddle athlete on the, I think I was the first guy.
Yeah.
So I kind of got like a little, he kind of let me formulate the team in a way, like bring some people that I thought would fit good to the team, and almost like a team captain kind of scenario. So I brought on some athletes or like introduced Danny, and he did what he wanted to do. But so this was just, this is like a SoCal, Kristen Thomas on the left, who's, basically a mainstay name in the sport. And Allison Fromm on the right was from Oregon. We were racing in Newport there. And so, Danny, every time if there's multiple athletes, we take the photo and send it to Danny and show him that we're kicking some butt. But yeah, so that was cool. And that was fun to be like involved that way, right? Like a company lets you kind of, ask your opinion on stuff like that.
Yeah.
This one I just thought was cool because the one thing I liked a lot about Werner Paddles was they were like the most innovative paddle, I believe, in the beginning. Like you could see my shaft is bent right there. And to you guys, that might not be that awkward, but in SUP, no one else ever made one. And I really like that paddle to this day. I really like that paddle for certain reasons. And I love that paddle. And for how people are, they just don't want to try anything new. I swore by that paddle, and it never really took off because it's just kind of an awkward looking thing, and people were scared to try new stuff. But I just thought it was cool.
Kind of paddle, that paddle is that's not very common then
no, I don't think you could get one anymore. I actually have like 2 or 3 in my garage. But
okay.
Yeah, so I was kind of known as the guy with the crooked paddle, and people would talk to me about it all the time, and I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I left it in my car, it melted," stuff like that.
It's worked.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you can see it. That I just thought that was cool because that's like surfing a wave on a race board, which is quite hard to do, and the weird guy with the crooked paddle. So I flew the flag with that thing pretty hard.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So this is like one of my proudest moments. So this was a huge tapestry that we would bring to like national trade shows, and this thing was massive, man. It was like 10 feet by 15 feet, and so that's me in the upper left hand corner in the orange boat, and then that's Dave in the bottom left hand corner. And I'm not gonna lie to you, like I designed this, so like I purposely wanted to finally be on some type of promo material with Dave Boehne. Like it was definitely kind of hard geeking on it, but
Yeah.
I think that his style, in my opinion, is you think of different surfers for what they do the best. Some guys are just super fast, and some guys just ride the tube really well. And if you don't mind to compliment Dave, I think you're one of the styliest surfers I've ever watched, and that's just a great example of it. So I'm just super proud to be on that banner with you.
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, and that's what was cool about Werner. It'd be fun because Danny's like, "Hey, I need some photos." So then I go do the photo shoot, send him some photos, and they actually use it. You'll see it on the site, or you'll see it on the, So it was
Very cool.
Just always felt like a cool little family.
Very cool.
Yeah, and that was probably one of my, if not most proud moments in stand-up paddling, was getting the cover of the the largest SUP magazine at the time. And because I knew at the time, they only had 6 magazines a year, right? So you had 6 opportunities to do that. They're probably only going to do 1 surf image, maybe a second one if you're lucky. So that's like one chance a year to get that. And we all knew that the magazines were depleting here soon. We didn't know when, but that's always been a childhood dream. I got that, and that was with the Werner paddle, and
for you,
I was stoked. Yeah.
Good for you.
So hold on to that one for a second, Bianca. So I see that magazine at least 4 times a year because I asked Dave to sign it for my father-in-law, and it's still to this day in their guest bathroom. And Dave signed it. Someday, Glenn. Someday. It was great, man. I always see that
awesome.
Very cool.
So that's Mount Katahdin, the terminus of the longest trail, the Appalachian Trail on the East Coast. And I just thought it was a really pretty photo to show in there. And, it's like, this was last year. And it's just, like I said, man, I'm just blessed to work where I can do what I want to do. And it's just really cool.
Beautiful colors.
That's another, obviously that's just, you can see the Werner logo on my board right there, the white one. And that was for a trip we did with the magazine to Costa Rica. And yeah, the one cool thing about, the paddles back then, like the Werner, that paddle in particular was like basically bomb proof. So like, you never had to worry about traveling with that thing and having it break. But yeah, that was just the heyday, man. Like going on trips to hold a paddle in your hand while you surf.
Yeah.
that's the Battle of the Paddle that Danny was mentioning. That's Doheny Beach right in my backyard. So basically the Super Bowl of stand-up paddling. Again, I just put it in there because it has the bent paddle in there. I thought it looked cool.
It does look cool.
Yeah, that's the same thing from that trip from Costa Rica. Afternoon session. Decent sized wave. So it's always kind of fun to try to navigate and get through bigger waves. And obviously if you do a cool turn, that's even better.
Just looking at that picture, you make it look fun. I'm serious. I mean, I'm looking at that top picture where you look like you're almost upside down, and you recover from it. That is very cool.
So from a surfer language, Dave is going backhand there. You see his butt is to the wave.
Yeah.
And in my experience, the greatest thing in all of sports is a backhand top turn. Like, it is just like the greatest feeling when you pull it off, man. Like, it's killer, man.
That is cool.
Super stylish.
Yeah, I don't know why I got pretty stoked on this bent shaft, but that's another.
I see some guns there, Dave. What's going on with that? I love it.
Well, you know what? There's a little gun show there, but that was just a cool photo. The story behind that photo was that was at a Battle of the Paddle, and I hurt my in between. So it's a 5-lap race. In between each lap, you have to get off your board and run around this chicane, and it's pretty far, and people are sprinting and whatever, and after the first one, I just kind of lunged and I hurt my like groin. So I tried it again. I couldn't really run through it, but I made it. And so on the third one, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna probably quit after this lap because by that point I was in last because I couldn't run, and the waves were pumping. And this is at my local break, so I'm like, I'm just gonna sit here and wait for a big wave. So everyone's still racing, trying to win, and I'm just out the back, and people are wondering what I'm doing. And people who knew what I was doing.
I'm in pain.
So I just waited and got a rad wave, and it made the magazine. So I went in there and had a did not finish in that race after that.
You did not finish.
Yeah.
Looks good though.
Yeah. I thought this was cool because you can see in the background, that's a tanker wave. So this is in Texas, and that's basically the wake that tanker is making. So in Texas, they have tanker surfing, and
really?
Yes, it's like a known or kind of an underground thing, but it's known, but it's people just go, what? I don't really understand, but basically you wait by these shallow sandbars and you wait for a tanker to come by, and a wave just appears and you catch it, and it goes for miles and miles and miles.
Wow.
And the cool thing about that was, we were like the first ones on stand-up paddle boards to ride that wave. So, cool thing about getting into a sport in the early days is you could kind of pioneer something. So there was all these firsts happening, so that was kind of a cool feather in the cap, I guess.
And you're giving the tanker guys a little show too. There's some little entertainment there, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in whitewater world, the outdoor toilet is called a groover. And that's because way back when like overnight trips started, you would make your number 2, if you will, into a 50 caliber ammo can. And the ammo can would put 2 grooves in your ass cheek. So hence the groover. So this rapid was like right at the groover. So I had to watch it like the night before while I was making my business. And then the next morning, and then I finally fire it up. And this was definitely one of the bigger rapids I ran on the Grand Canyon. And luckily the photographer got it, because as soon as I landed, I ate shit really hard. But it's a pretty awesome photo, man. Like, at least I'm giving her,
You're right.
So this is the Wisconsin race that Dave and I were at, and I just threw this in because there's a couple of other ones that kind of lead into it. So, but just while you're on this, this was the initial race boards. Like, this thing was, oh my God, it weighed a ton. Like, that thing is wider than my recreational touring boards now. And God knows what Dave was on, because, he was shaping his own stuff. And this is really the infancy of stand-up paddle racing. So it was it was great times, man. It was cool to be a part of it and have him along for the ride.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so this is funny. So after the Boehne beatdown, we'll call it, I decide that I'm a world-class paddler, right? So
Wow.
I go and do this race on it was like a World Cup stop in Salt Lake City before this big trade show. So number 10 up there in the upper left-hand corner is one of the most like decorated stand-up paddle racers in the world ever, Danny Ching. And this race is at 8,000 feet. And I had all the hope in the world that I would do good. And Jesus, man, I barely finished. It was awful. It was just such a terrible race. Not only was everybody better than me, but the elevation was brutal.
Wow. Nice picture.
Yeah, that's good. All right, there's one more from that Salt Lake City race.
Okay, there we go.
No, that's just that's it. Okay, this is the one. So here I am, right? And so at the end of the race, they have relay races, 3-person teams. And like I'm just standing back with my girlfriend at the time. I'm like, I'm not gonna race. And all of a sudden, and I mean this, like I was so stoked. Like Dave comes and asks me to be on his team. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is the best paddlers in the world at the time. And like, I'm going to race, right? And so I'm the anchor leg. And luckily, Dave and the second guy throw down a huge lead. So it's my race to win or lose, right? So I get out there and, regionally, like I'm a, kind of a badass at the time in the Northeast, but like on the World Cup stage, like I'm a peon, right? So here I am, and I don't know, man. Dave could probably attest, but there's got to be 200 people on the beach. Like it's a pretty good crowd. People are cheering, and the dude on the right is Slater Trout, who is one of the most well-renowned stand-up paddlers in the world. And this dude is just eating water, man. Like every stroke he takes, like he's making it up. So we land on the beach, right? And I run as fast as I can, and I dive.
Oh, wow.
And I win the race, and Dave's stoked, and like everyone's fired. And Slater loses his mind. Like Slater's like, there's no diving in stand-up paddling. And I'm like, I just don't, bro. I want.
I love it.
I fully remember that. And it took me a second though. I was like, what race is that? And I fully remember now. It was at the H2 Overdrive or something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember you dove, and I was super stoked because Slater was my new like hotshot team rider. So it was like fun to be like, bro, we got you, dude. And he literally was so bummed. And I remember, you diving, and we're just going crazy. Oh, that was so good.
That's great. Very good.
Slater's like 6'1", and like he's like a 6'1" Bruce Lee, like just shredded from eyelids to toes, right? And I'm like 5'4" on a good day, And so it was pretty awesome.
That's funny.
So good.
Oh my God.
The best story to finish things off. Dave and Danny, where can people follow you on social media?
Well, you can follow the Infinity label. It's at @Infinity_SUP. And then my Instagram is @TheBrownBlur with 2 R's. That's the tricky one. That you got to crack the code with the 2 R's at the end. But other than that, see you in the water.
Yeah, I'm pretty easy. We're just at NRS. Nancy Robert Sam is the company I work for, and my last name is almost impossible to spell, but you'll figure it out. It's just at Danny Mongno on Instagram and Facebook, and we'd be stoked to see some of your listeners out there saying hello.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. Well, we'd like to thank you both, Dave and Danny, for being our guests here on the Camping Show. It was a pleasure having you both here with us this evening. Thanks, guys.
And we'd also like to thank each of our sponsors for bringing you tonight's show, Campground Views, Rutabaga Paddle Sports, and Novacraft Canoe.
Yeah, be sure to tune in for next week's show. And until then, this is CW Getz.
And I'm Bianca Cahill.
Reminding you, learn more, do more. See you next week.
Have a great evening. Good night.